welcome to the BGreen Media Literacy Project. Today's episode is on climate change and citizen action, and our featured organization is Climate Action Now. We have with us the members of the steering committee of the organization. Welcome to the show, Dr. David Glassberg, who's the professor of history at UMass Amherst, and Karen Ribeiro, who's an environmental consultant, climate activist, and founder of Inner Fortune at Amherst. So thank you for being on the show with us and talking about one of the most pressing issues, I think, right now, and giving us a perspective into the citizen side of things and how citizens can mobilize and hopefully work together to bring about some kind of a meaningful change around us. So tell us a little bit about the kind of work that you're involved in with Climate Action Now as steering committee members.
Sure. Climate Action Now is a coalition of campaigns, and we're working on issues of divestment. We're working on the Springfield Climate Action Plan, issues on the pipeline going through Western Mass, Mothers Out Front, a variety of issues that are about fossil fuels, really, about our future, creating a livable climate so that we're helping to create solutions.
All right.
Yeah, if I could add something, the organization has been around for just about 2 years.
2 years.
And how it started, I was in at the beginning, and how it started was that Bill McKibben was coming to Amherst College to speak, and a number of us in the community were saying that there are a lot of people who are concerned about what's going on with the climate, but they don't really have an outlet for acting on their concerns. And so we developed a workshop that was 2 days after McKibben spoke, which attracted 250 people to a church in Amherst. About 10 different organizations presented what they do in terms of taking action on some of the issues that McKibben was raising. And then the following year, we did a similar kind of conference in Springfield. And again, we had about 250 people there. And it all was involved with the idea that, okay, you're worried about the climate, but here's something that you can do about it. And here's a group of people that you can join and have a sense of fellowship as you're working together on these very difficult issues.
And what's really important here is that there's two things. One is that Climate Action Now is grassroots, 100% volunteer-led organization. We're not a nonprofit. We're a volunteer community organizing group with the model of our steering committee making collaborative decisions. But the second most important issue is that we're looking at the issues that affect the people who need our voice, our alliance building efforts with them. So after that first year, which was extremely successful given the fact that it was organized in 6 weeks, we pledged to have the second event in Springfield led by people who were not necessarily climate activists, so that we were educating people of color to come together around climate and mobilize. And just recently there was a march in Springfield for the Springfield Climate Action Plan that was passed, and it was a beautiful example of solidarity around climate and community organizing.
So a couple of questions that I have that I want to know more about. So from my understanding, the Climate Action Now Coalition is more like an umbrella organization then that sort of helps out with smaller causes and sort of a platform that unites all the different causes, right? Is that something?
We're evolving in that direction, yeah. We're finding that there are people who've got particular things that they feel passionate about, like divesting from fossil fuels, or the thing that I feel most passionate about actually is environmental justice issues, which is why I've been very active in Springfield, because people there who are suffering double the asthma rate of the rest of the state of Massachusetts are particularly vulnerable if temperatures rise and ozone levels rise and all that. They're really literally on the front line of climate issues.
So when you say environmental justice issues, could you guide us and the viewers understand a little bit about the world of environmental justice, so that it may be that it is often a vague term that people may not totally have a clear understanding on. So as a historian, as an environmental historian, and as a steering committee member of Climate Action Now, could you help the viewers understand that a little bit?
Well, there's always been within environmentalism a social justice component, but it hasn't always been made explicit. If you go back to the turn of the 20th century, some of the first laws that were involved with smoke abatement in inner cities or cleaning up water pollution all had some of that component to it. But really it was in the 1980s that it became explicit. And that was in North Carolina when a group of civil rights activists actually organized around the siting of a dump in North Carolina with toxic waste. And they said that this isn't just an environmental issue, but it's actually an issue of environmental racism. Why is it that this dump is being put in a community which is predominantly African American and poor?
Right.
And so for the last 30 years or so, this has been kind of a very specific question, is not just cleaning up the environment in general, but also recognizing that there's some communities that are really on the front lines when it comes to environmental degradation, and that those are the communities that need special attention and actually advocacy.
Right.
Exactly.
So you had mentioned in your comment, Karen, that specifically a lot of the movements, especially the march, was targeted towards educating the people of color about issues around climate change and sustainability and sort of how to organize themselves and educate themselves around it. Do you think the education should just be limited to people of color communities, or do you think it's across the board in different communities? Because I think the conversation needs to happen in both places. People in power versus people who are disempowered?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think that the education is a little different. You know, educating people who may not feel they have an environmental voice that they can express to authority figures in public office. That's a different training than someone who, or a community of people who feel like they do have that voice. To use that voice and really take action. So those are subtle nuances of the same issue, and uniting those voices are really a key facet of what I think Climate Action Now brings. It's real grassroots organizing and looking at the issues from a holistic perspective and bringing many different stakeholders together.
If I could reframe something, I don't think we're educating the community alone. I think that actually they're educating us. And I'm thinking about, in particular, Climate Action Now started in Amherst, in Northampton, in the upper valley here, with people who didn't necessarily have a lot of experience with what it was like to live in these communities. And by going to Springfield and actually we did these workshops over the summer. We did one in the North End, which was predominantly a Latino community, and we were doing it half in Spanish and half in English. And then we did it in Mason Square, which is predominantly an African American community. And then we also did a third one that was more, a general population of Springfield. And we actually listened and we said, okay, how do you connect with this issue? What are the things that concern you the most? And I think that we learned a lot from that in terms of our own advocacy. Like, asthma is not a huge issue in Amherst. I mean, it's an issue, but not in the same way that the Horanis School in Springfield, which is bordered by these two superhighways and has buses idling all the time, and it's a very immediate issue for these people.
Yeah, that's a really great point, David. Thank you for making that that distinction, because it really is about listening. It's not educating people with an agenda. It's a dialogue, and all of our general meetings at Climate Action Now are set up, as dialogues. We have breakout sessions, and we discuss these very difficult issues in a very open forum where everyone can share equally. And I think that's what really inspires me most is to learn from the community members and the amazing perspective and collective wisdom that comes together around these issues to say, you know, we're really concerned, and how do we move forward? And there's just information coming from different angles, and when it coalesces, the next steps really become clear.
Right.
One of the things that when you mentioned the idling buses that came to mind is the People's Climate March that happened in September. You know, one of the great exciting things that I was part of was the organizing the buses from our area. And we had over 20 buses just from our area to go to New York City and march with over 400,000 people that day. And those kinds of mobilization actions are what really help you stay connected to your community members and march with them, for them, and you feel so much more just empowered and fulfilled with the work. It's really a beautiful experience and we invite everybody from the community to our general meetings that happen the fourth Monday of every month.
But that question of empowerment actually also applies to my teaching when I teach environmental history at UMass, because when the subject of climate comes up, students often are very discouraged and they wonder, what can we do? And we're really in a bad way. And I've really very consciously tried to teach it as a subject that, okay, it's a serious problem, but also there are solutions, some of which can be found actually in the past.
Right, absolutely. How do you deal with the uncertainty that is always there in the media that is projected about climate change not being a point of agreement in the scientific community? How do you address that to your students or to other critiques of your project and your work?
Well, see, for me, the uncertainty of the scientists is even more reason to act. Because
Exactly.
when the scientists make a projection of what they think is going to happen, we've got to assume that, you know, there's a 50% chance that things may turn out better, or there's a 50% chance that things may turn out worse. And obviously, if they turn out better, we're in great shape. Right. But if they turn out worse, we really have to prepare for that. And there's this concept that is fairly well established called the precautionary principle. And we think about it in drug testing all the time, that you don't put something out on the market until it's tested, and it has to prove that it's safe before it's being used.
Right.
And in a sense, this huge experiment is happening right now with all of us, where we're putting all this carbon dioxide into the atmosphere and we're raising the temperature levels, and we're saying, I wonder what's going to happen. And I think that it's better to err on the safe side.
Got it. Absolutely. I couldn't be in more agreement about this.
And another challenge to the discussion or the conversation about this is that it's very painful to learn about fracking and the toxic chemicals and the amount of pure water that's turned into forever contaminated water in the process, the extreme extraction measures that we're seeing now in our backyard and all over the world. That's really hard to bear. So coming together in community is a way to mitigate that and to be able to take action together despite the pain of that reality.
Great. Could you tell us a little bit about the Springfield Climate Action March that happened recently, and also how perhaps it connects to the larger movement that happened in New York City a few weeks ago?
Well, out of the meeting that we had a year ago in Springfield with the 250 people, one of the things that came out was we recognized that there needed to be some kind of comprehensive plan for the city of Springfield to deal with a lot of different issues that interact with each other, whether it's air pollution or mass transportation, because obviously with mass transportation you take fewer cars off the road, so it actually helps with air pollution. Having food available for people that is healthy, and so gardening the community, which I know is going to be one of your shows. And we thought, if there was someone who was actually hired by the city of Springfield to pull all this together, and particularly to help the city of Springfield apply for outside grants so that a lot of these things could be accomplished, that would actually benefit the community. And so the march on Monday was very specific. It was to the city council to have them pass a resolution, which they did pass, that advocates that the city of Springfield hire somebody who then will go out and help to bring in grants and coordinate and to accomplish some of the things that need to be accomplished.
Got it. Would you like to add a little bit to it, the experience of being in the march? And
well, yeah, I wish I was. I was there in spirit. I'm currently on crutches, so I wasn't able to march, but our Mothers Out Front group was there, and a number from Climate Action Now were there for sure, A Rise for Social Justice, and I've seen the video footage and I've seen photos, and it's really beautiful and I've read the plan, and it's a great, strong plan, and I'm glad it passed.
Great, that's fantastic. So would you tell me a little bit about the limitations that you have as a group, I would say, or generally in the field of citizen action that you have experienced after being in the steering committee? Because as the founder of the BGreen Youth Action Project, I've noticed that one of the challenges of doing something that engages different community members and organizations to mobilize around issues of, even if it's a common goal of climate change and environmental action, everybody seems to have a different perspective and different set of priorities even within the larger goal. So how have you negotiated that, especially because from the conversation it's pretty apparent that Climate Action Now is the coalition that's sort of the mother organization that is helping out much smaller causes. So what would you say have been the challenges for you on field, like while continuing with the process?
Well, there's two things. One, I want to clarify that we're not like we're an umbrella organization that supports, and
Exactly.
I like the analogy of mother, because mother puts their arms around these, like the no frack gas and mess and all of the other different initiatives. But I think the key is the fact that it's a constant dialogue. There's constant communication. So the issues present themselves over time because we're all kind of plugged in and personally committed. And even though our personal commitments might be, very different, we're committed to the same thing, which is a healthy society, healthy air, clean water, this beautiful land that we all come to love and respect. That's the goal, to have that for everyone and for the future generations. So the specific campaigns may evolve over time depending on, what our political officials are focusing on, or where the passion and energy is. But I think the common goals are very established. So it's just kind of how we respond to the movement at the moment.
And truthfully, there are people who have disagreements, and we try to focus on what people have in common.
Got it.
And in some cases, the people who feel very passionate about something have left us because they feel that, we're not adequately addressing their particular concern. And a very specific example of that is when we were first starting out with Climate Action Now, there were some people who felt very strongly that we needed to take a very strong position on nuclear power. And I'm opposed to nuclear power, and I would say that the overwhelming majority of people who are in our organization are opposed to nuclear power. But Bill McKibben and his 350.org has never come out explicitly against nuclear power. And people thought, oh, we can't possibly work with him because he hasn't taken this explicit stand, so he must be endorsing it in some way.
Right.
And would love it if he actually did say that nuclear power is not going to be the answer, but I'm still willing to work with a lot of the things that we're trying to work on, knowing in fact that in that particular case, the economics of nuclear power are so bad that that's what killed the nuclear power industry back in the 1980s. And certainly after what happened a couple years ago in Japan, I don't really think nuclear power is going to be making much of a comeback anywhere in the world.
All right. Yeah, it's interesting because the BGreen project that the annual conference that we had in Dhaka, Bangladesh, last year, we had a deliberation event on understanding youth perspectives on nuclear power and development of nuclear power plants in Bangladesh, which is now being planned. So it was interesting to know the results. It was a long process of deliberation with the youth, with 150 youth, talking about what they thought should be the future, nuclear future of Bangladesh, and the results were interesting. There was most people were interested in actually figuring out like a way in which they could understand and learn more on nuclear energy before moving forward. And there was only a minority, like one group out of all the student groups that wanted to just go ahead and do it. So it was interesting results, and hopefully it's going to turn into a research paper at some point for me. Youth of Bangladesh and their perspectives on it, and it's something that we could be doing in universities across the U.S. as well, to find out where the youth's interests and ideas and sort of inspirations are at in understanding like global nuclear technology.
Well, nuclear power is a great example of this notion of uncertainty and precautions.
Exactly.
I mean, the story, about like how many nuclear engineers does it take to change a light bulb?
Right.
And the answer is 51 to change the bulb and 49 to figure out what to do with the old one.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the 20 years it takes once a plant is shut down to cool off and be considered safe is another big factor.
Right.
So you brought up the point of nuclear, and you tied to Bill McKibben, and I just want to draw another connection to 350 Mass. 350 Mass was founded about 2 years ago as well, around the same time that Climate Action Now was founded, and we worked together as a node of 350 Mass, which is a Better Future project, and that's an important thing because Climate Action Now has a state connection to the work that's going on statewide.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about your personal stakes in being involved in climate change and environmental activism? What brings you here? What brings you to this place to begin with?
Well, I'll start by saying I'm very passionate about economic justice. I was a former banker, and when I see things happening like this extreme extraction and other decisions being made on behalf of community members without the community members' input or full awareness, I get frustrated to the point of action. And I left banking specifically to become more involved in the environmental movement, and I've done many things in that area. But now the full-time climate activism hat that I feel I wear is to just continue bringing people into the movement.
Fantastic.
Especially youth, yeah.
Well, I come at this from a different number of angles, but they all seem to converge in the same place. I mean, I'm a parent, so obviously I'm worried about the kind of world that my children are growing up in and potentially grandchildren, though there aren't any yet. I'm interested also out of kind of a religious conviction that if there's something that's wrong with the world, that we don't have necessarily the responsibility of finishing the job, but we need to start it and we need to get moving and take action in some way. That's part of kind of why we're on the planet, is to make it a better place.
Yeah,
that's great.
That's beautiful.
So I'd like to end by knowing what the immediate future plans are for Climate Action Now. What are I know that you had mentioned you opened the show with telling us what your different projects are, but what are the go-to priorities for the next year, you can say, for Climate Action Now when it comes to community organizing?
Well, our constant priority is to bring more people to our general meetings that happen the fourth Monday of every month, and to continue to move forward on issues of divestment and no fossil fuels and support other initiatives. We've got a couple of proposals that or projects, campaigns that we're looking at, but we'll have to come to the next general meeting to find out.
Okay.
But actually, if I can get very specific, is that there's some actions right now that the state legislature is contemplating involving divesting the state pension fund from fossil fuels, involving trying to make sure that we're not building any more power plants that are relying on fossil fuels, that we're investing state money in renewables, that there's still subsidies for people who want to put solar panels. And so there really is a very directed state campaign. And I think that in the next immediate future, that's where a lot of our energies are going to be, particularly because there's a governor election, and we've got a new governor of Massachusetts who's going to come in, and we want to make sure that he or she gets off to a good start.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here and giving us your time. And it was such a fantastic perspective into the work that's going on in the locality around the issues of climate change and citizen action. And it's really refreshing to hear, because I think one of the most underrepresented perspectives and paradigms are really citizen engagement on issues of climate change and global warming, because oftentimes it's talked about in very large, vague, and dehumanized ways.
Exactly.
And I think it's so important to bring into perspective and to the forefront issues of human voices and how it connects to this to climate change. So thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thanks for inviting us.
Thank you so much, and hope to see you in your meetings.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you, Padre.
Thank you. Bye-bye.